So what's going on, guys? In today's video, I'm going to be reviewing the latest Netflix horror film, Fear Street Prom Queen. If you're completely out of the loop, a couple of years ago, Netflix made this Fear Street trilogy of movies based on the books by R.L. Stine, the guy who wrote Goosebumps. And I was pleasantly surprised with that entire trilogy. I liked all of them. I thought they were hidden gems, unexpected the year they came out. So I had decently high expectations for this film. It's kind of a pseudo reimagining of the original Prom Night with Jamie Lee Curtis. How I would describe this movie is you basically have a bunch of mean girls who are up for the running of Prom Queen, and somebody in a raincoat with an axe is slaying them all one by one. Whether or not you like this film, I think immediately ask yourself the question, which of these camps you fall into. If you're somebody who seeks out 80s slashers, you like campy films, you'll like any of them, no matter how brain dead they are. You're probably going to have at least a good enough time with this film because it is pretty throwback in nature. But if you're in another camp where you're just here because this is the newest thing to Netflix, you're not crazy about slashers, you don't really get the campiness, maybe pass on this one because I think this movie is really tailored to a particular audience. But yeah, this movie is oozing 80s. There's a lot of stuff that are references to that original movie. Homages in here to the original Phantasm and other horror films of the time. It's got an absolutely killer soundtrack. If you're like me, you love 80s films, that's right up there for you as well. Kind of doing that thing I harp on sometimes where it's just a best of collection of all of the 80s songs we've heard 10,000 times. Nothing super unique in here. Never Gonna Give You Up, Cruel Summer, all of the songs we've come to know and love. Let's talk about why you might actually turn on Prom Queen and watch it if you do have Netflix. Really, I can only imagine that would be the case if you're a huge fan of slashers or you liked that original trilogy. Sad to report, this movie has no connection whatsoever to that trilogy, so it stands alone for better and worse. If you are a fan of slashers, as I said just a minute ago, I think this movie will fulfill your needs well enough. I don't think it's anything so memorable you have to run out and see it or anything you'll tell all your friends about. But it does have some of the elements that made those movies in the 80s fun, and I think it's self-aware enough to know the type of movie it is, who this movie would appeal to. That being said, when you come to a movie like this, you're really only there for a couple of reasons: the campiness and the kills. And I didn't really think anything about the kills in this movie were very creative. Sure, they are kind of gruesome and unexpected at points. It's more gruesome than I thought this movie was going to be, if I'm being honest, for a Netflix film. Huge red flag though, because for slashers, what makes these films memorable, why we come back to them, is the kills. You gotta have a handful of really memorable kills. I don't really think this movie has them. This is a textbook example of a slasher film as well, where I did not care about these characters at all. You will not care about these characters at all. It's just a bunch of preppy mean girls who are out battling one another while somebody's killing them off, and quite frankly, that's all you're here for, is to watch the next one die. You don't care about any of these characters, who lives, who dies. You just want this guy to come on screen, kill them off, because in between that, I thought this movie was surprisingly boring. Another example of a movie mimicking 80s slashers that's really all style, no substance. I always say you don't need to have fantastic characters in a slasher, but you have to have somebody you can latch onto to either root for or really root against. This movie is the latest example of the widespread issue that kind of does neither. You really don't have a main character you care about or root for at all. And you don't really hate anybody as well enough that you really want them to die. They're all just kind of there. Like they're just off in the ether and you're waiting for them to die. In between that, you don't care about anything. Which really messes with the pacing of a slasher film. If you don't have any comedic relief or characters that are at least interesting on the surface, all you're waiting for is the kills. That's where I found myself. And as I already said, when you get to those kills, I don't think the creativeness is enough to carry the lack of tension in between them. Also, I have to say, the killer's outfit in this, that's another huge thing to 80s slashers. Left something to be desired. It's just a guy in a red raincoat with a really old faded mask and an axe. Again, very simple like the original Prom Nights. Maybe that's what they were going for. But it left something to be desired for me, and I just thought this killer was pretty lame aesthetically. Sure, in essence, this movie is very similar, but it feels like a cardboard cutout, a shell that doesn't really understand why people find those movies so campy. There's a lot of stuff in this film that mimics what they did in the 80s, but it doesn't have the feel of it. Like the way the camera looks, I understand. The grainy picture, it's faded, feels aesthetically like the 80s. Then you have the killer with a simple design, gruesome kills. I'm all for it. But there's so much stuff in this film, like the way these characters talk and some of the responses to the killer, that feels so inorganic, like somebody's copying the 80s without ever having been there or understanding what made those movies kind of corny. For example, there's a scene in this movie where a character loses his hand and he's trying to open up a doorknob. But obviously he can't do that because he doesn't have a hand. And he's struggling to do this, and I think this is supposed to be a comedic moment, but the fact that I'm not even sure about that is exactly what I'm saying. But all the while during this scene, this character is not screaming, he's not struggling, he's acting like nothing's wrong, and he just lost his hand. So I would imagine this is the type of scene that's supposed to inspire campiness, but it just comes off as stupid and half-baked because the characters aren't acting real, they're not scared for their lives, and there's just this disconnect between what the movie's trying to do and what me as the audience is seeing happen, because A lot of the time during this movie, I did not understand character actions whatsoever. You'll have characters who get stuck in the back with an axe and they turn around and look at the killer and they seemingly don't feel pain during the scene. Again, maybe that's the tone this movie's going for, but for me, it didn't work, and the whole movie just felt kind of awkward, like there was no stakes to anything because the characters seemingly didn't care if they were going to die. Be honest with yourself. If this movie sounds like your type of movie, it probably is your type of movie. If it sounds like a movie that you've seen 10,000 times before and it's just not your thing, it's not going to be your thing. And with all of that being said, this movie is right up my alley. It should have been a home run, but it just didn't land. I thought this movie was pretty boring, and I was pretty uninvested in it. I thought it was background noise. So if you guys do get around to seeing Prom Queen, comment down below, let me know what you thought of it, or just let me know what you thought of the original Fear Street trilogy. Were you as surprised as me? As always, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, comment, like the video, subscribe, all of that down below really helps me. But I will see you in the next review. Peace.